Hello, everybody. This is Rev Sue Frederick, and I am so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. Let's have a mystical conversation, the kind where we lose ourselves in the wonders of divine mysteries, share dreams from the other side, intuitive nudgings, and soul mission yearnings. A mystical conversation is what happens when we lift above the ordinary world, the ego mind, and we review life from that sacred place of divine inspiration. And today's guest is definitely going to take us there because Shaun has become absolutely one of my favorite people. His name is Shaun Lether. Did I say that right, Shaun?
Yeah, Lether. Uh-huh.
And through a series of spiritually transformative experiences, which we call STEs, don't mix up those initials with something else. It's an STE and near-death experiences, which we call NDEs, and their powerful after effects. Shaun Lether woke up to his true spiritual nature and discovered his life purpose. That purpose did not revolve around his previous success in academics and business. Rather, his soul's purpose centered around mind, body, and spirit healing and being of service to others. Shaun is the founder and leader of Hawaiian IANDS, and IANDS stands for International Association of Near-Death Studies, IANDS, and he leads near-death and STE sharing groups with many spiritual organizations. He also runs several NDE, STE, and Life After Death Facebook groups, which have a combined membership of 1.1 million people. So this is clearly a very important topic, and Shaun's story is so compelling. And I'll share that he had me on his Hawaiian IANDS group podcast, and it was huge. Everyone loves Shaun so much that whenever he speaks, there's just hundreds of people who come to hear him. So, without further ado, Shaun, why don't you take us back to when you were a happy, wealthy businessman and what happened?
Oh, thank you so much, Sue. And I'm just so grateful that we met. And, I feel such a connection with you. So I'm honored to be here. And yeah, so back in 2003, I lived in Los Angeles and had everything that this world says that we could want. I graduated with 4 degrees and bought a lot of real estate and had a house in LA and or a condo in LA and a house in Palm Springs and a house in Big Bear Lake and so it was a Christmas in 2003 and I just bought all new biking appliances and had a new Hummer and it snowed. I love snow at Christmas time, and I was having everybody in my family come to Big Bear. And and I got up early and I went and drove around the lake and I put on that song Believe by Cher. And something just dawned on me that I had everything that the world says that we want, but I wasn't happy. And and I think those were in some ways the magic words because months later I was traveling to Hawaii and had no intention of living here. I was going to maybe buy some property. And back then I also did modeling and acting. And so I was like perfect shape and everything was kind of seemed perfect. Uh and I developed a abdominal hernia. And so the plane took off from LA, and the minute the plane started to take off, my hernia strangulated. And so when a hernia strangulates, most people die within 24 to 48 hours. But I didn't know that that's actually what happened. And so I ended up going 4 days. I Back then I was into only holistic doctors. And I went to a holistic doctor, and they gave me, some IVs and stuff, and should have known what was wrong because my chest was turning black and blue. So by the next day, I was so bad, I went to the ER, and they knew immediately what was wrong with me. So I I was in this jungle hospital on the big island of Hawaii and I was from LA, and I'm like, please, can't you just give me something and I'm go home and get a surgery in LA? And they're like, no, you're not even gonna make it, in the next 20 minutes if we don't start. So anyway, this was my first adult NDE. I'd actually had one when I was a kid, but I didn't really remember it. And all of a sudden, I literally everything started turning black, and all of a sudden, and what was interesting about this NDE it was what some people might call distressing, and but the thing was is I knew what was happening, and I just kept saying no, I can't die. I've got too many things to do. And I said, I won't accept it, and I'll end up as a ghost haunting this hospital, and no one's ever going to find me. And so, next thing I knew, I was in this darkness, and that the light was up to the right, and I was somehow I didn't even know what NDEs were, but somehow I knew, like I was like, don't go to that light, like don't go to that light. And
Is that
well,
because you believed that that would be your death then for sure?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. And I knew I wouldn't accept it. Like literally, I knew because I knew I had things to do that I hadn't, done. I mean, I'd done all the stuff that really didn't matter, and I, had kind of realized that a little bit. And so anyway, um, I ended up they did the emergency surgery, and I ended up uh, surviving. And but they had to cut out like 7 feet of necrotic intestines. And because it was like I was all full of bacteria because it had basically died, my intestines, they had to leave my stomach open, and they couldn't sew it up because of the bacteria. So they said, you need to stay in Hawaii for 6 months.
I just want to make a statement here that you have the most powerful soul nudges through your body of anybody I have ever met. Other people are supposed to move to Hawaii according to their life plan, and they just, think, oh, I'd like to live there. But you have to actually have a health condition where the doctor says you can't leave Hawaii, Shaun.
Yeah, yeah, I needed all of that. I mean, I really uh it it was truly a blessing. I mean, everything that happened over the last 20 years, at the time it wasn't a blessing, but now I realize it is. So, yeah, so I was a really good manifester back then. And I said, okay, well, if I have to stay in Hawaii, I want to recover by a waterfall. So literally, Homes and Land magazine the next day, there's 8 acres, 3 houses, private river, and several waterfalls, and it was just amazing. And it was for rent and for sale. So I moved in there, and I rented it, and then I worked out a deal to buy it. Well, cut to a couple of years after, um, I was in the shower, and I heard a voice, and it said, "Get ready. You're going to lose everything." And I knew what it meant when it said get ready. It meant like your spiritual tools, because you're going to need some. Uh, and I actually didn't listen. So for the next,
Shaun, so even when you stayed in Hawaii to heal, you were still the businessman, the real estate person. Had your spiritual beliefs changed at all then?
yes.
Tell me.
So the interesting thing is after that NDE, I was so full of love because
Mhm.
I'd never experienced that kind of love. And I also was apologizing to everyone that I had wronged before. Like, I really wanted to be a better person. But I, my little sister used to call me a cross between Darren Star, the guy that created Sex in the City, and Eckhart Tolle, because like I have these pulls between the illusory world and then the real world. So I needed to be hit over the head, like literally, to get on my path. And so what happening? So that, I heard that voice. I knew what it meant. I was still being a slow learner. And then all of a sudden, I had been manifesting everything, you know, before, and it was easy, making money, all this stuff. Now, none of it worked. Nothing worked. And that's when I learned what a dark night of the soul is. It was, I couldn't understand it. Like, everything that could go wrong was going wrong. The financial collapse in 2008, 2009, it was literally like uh, everything. So I ended up, all this real estate, it had gone way up high and then it crashed. And then all kinds of other things started happening. And what was interesting is I learned about in Hawaii, they call them Amakua, which is like a personal god, and owls. I was seeing owls everywhere, which they call pueo here. And it was so bizarre because every time I saw it, I knew something more is going to happen. And so at some point, I left everything. I left the Big Island. I moved over here to Hawaii or to Honolulu with a suitcase and tried to kind of reinvent myself. And like, I was going to do it again. I made all this money before. So I still wasn't completely listening. And then in
So,
2015,
so you're saying that even though you left your body, went to the higher realms, you understood that this is a temporary life, you came back and said, "Hey, I love everybody. I'm sorry I've been a jerk," but you still were chasing the money game. Is that correct?
yeah,
So that's when Spirit said, "Shaun, come on." And by the way, I'm going to add to this that you're a 22 master soul in numerology, and I'm a 22, and it means we are definitely here to shift consciousness, to be you said you loved Eckhart Tolle. Yes, to be that kind of a teacher in our own way. So no wonder Spirit was knocking you on the head, going, "Hey, quit the real estate, would you?"
yeah. Yeah, and also what I learned, I had to lose everything that was tethering me to this dream. And and so it was like this, the layers of the onions being peeled, the ego death. And so everything, literally everything that tethered me to this world, even my animals,
Wow.
I yeah, I ended up losing everything. And so in 2015, my mom passed away. And it was very interesting. I was struggling here. So I used to make like 30,000 a month, no problem. Now I can't even make $1,500 a month to pay my rent. Like, it was bizarre. And and I grew up in a dysfunctional kind of family, and there was a lot of things going on. And I just didn't feel like going to the memorial. So
Right.
anyway, she came to me literally within 24 hours of crossing over. She was not very happy at the time, but she told me, "You don't need to go. That's not where I am." And she showed me this beautiful garden, and she's sitting on a log, and there's these big like pine trees, and I had no idea where it was, but she told me, "Go there. That's where I'll be."
Wow.
Basically, 6 months later, um, I had a sister busy. We were gonna go hiking to a place that I'd never been and she'd never been. And as we're going up this mountain, I started getting like major vertigo. like like but it was only like 4,000 feet. So, and I don't get height sickness.
Mhm.
And but as we got closer and closer to this part, I was so dizzy and I got out of the car, like did a face plant on the ground. I was really like delirious and rested on a picnic table for a while. And then we started going for a walk. Well, I was behind my sister and we're walking, and all of a sudden I look over to the left, and there's my mom sitting on the log. We're in the place that she had showed me like 6 to 8 months before.
Wow.
And it blew my mind.
So, how did this change your spiritual perspective?
It changed everything because so I'd been kind of communicating with her, but there were several times when I wasn't sure. But she did all kinds of amazing things, like because I'm stubborn, right? So in fact, she even said to me once, she's like, "What do you need, a burning bush?" Because
I love
and
that.
so yes, so it really it was amazing because she showed me her life, and as I mentioned, she had mental health issues. She had an NDE in 1975, and she was not happy to come back. She did not want to be in this world. And so she showed me her life. And when she showed me everything the way it was, all of a sudden I had like this 360-degree view.
I
And
just want to say, Shaun, that I've never had anybody else. My mother died in March. We had had a very troubled relationship. And the first thing she did was start showing me her childhood and how hard it was, so much harder than what I had known about. That's amazing that you and I have had that experience
yeah,
to help us heal with our mothers.
yes, I mean, that's one of the most amazing things that I'm so grateful for
Yeah,
is that to heal what couldn't be healed. So
right.
what was interesting, but I kept asking her, like, why are you here? And she just kept saying to be the mother that she couldn't be
Wow.
when she was alive. But she didn't tell me what was going to happen. Like literally, I kind of wondered, like, is something major going to happen? But she never told me that.
Mm.
And so then in 2017, I started getting sick. I've always had lung issues and pneumonia and bronchitis and stuff throughout my life. But I started getting sick, and I was still mostly into the herbs and stuff. So I was taking all these Chinese herbs that normally work, and they weren't working. And my oxygen started going down. I got to the point I couldn't walk. I was really um, like I kept thinking the herbs would work. And again, stubborn, right? Everybody's like, you need to go to the hospital.
The
And
Capricorn 22-4 is a cautionary tale, just like the Virgo 22-4 is. That's my path.
yeah, and so the funny thing is now I am listening. I always listen now,
Yeah.
but I had to learn the hard way. I had to burn my hand on the stove many times. So yeah, so I started getting sick, and end of October, and it wasn't. Oh, I got us back up. Something that was kind of cool is my mom was a master astrologer,
Oh,
and she did everything by hand. And so she did everybody's charts, and every time we'd meet somebody, she'd do their charts. And so when I was about like 8, somewhere around there, she did my chart, and she explained to me, certain things, but one of them was that when I was 50, something major was going to happen. And she said, like a death or something life changing. But she didn't, she raised me not to be afraid of it. It was just something's going to happen. And so on my 50th birthday, I was in the ICU dying.
oh my
And
God, Shaun.
yeah,
So
so,
what were you diagnosed with this time?
oh, I had all kinds of a huge list. I mean, they like literally hit me over the head with all kinds of things. And it's pretty funny, but several kinds of
I am
pneumonia.
sure that you're my brother in spirit. I am sure you are part of my soul posse, Shaun. This story is
Oh,
so
definitely.
great.
Yeah, and so what was interesting is, they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And so they're like, but they knew that they had to put me in the ICU, but I was in I was a mess. Like, because I'd been dying for like 3 months. And so like this woman was a nurse, and she was like cleaning me up. And what was really interesting is all of a sudden this nurse turns into a nun wearing like a habit. And instead of like downtown Honolulu, I'm looking out the window and it's like the Spanish countryside, like 500 years ago. But somehow I knew it was Spain. I've never been to Spain, but I knew. And so this woman who I didn't know who she was, she actually, the first thing she said is that she wanted to thank me for helping her fulfill her purpose, one of her purposes, which is helping people cross over to the other side. And the first thing I said, or thought, was, uh, I'm not dying. And number two was, you're thanking me. I should be thanking you. And so I didn't know who she was at the time. But I later saw a picture of St. Teresa of Avila. And I'm like, that's who it was.
And that's a Catholic saint.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that's something that's kind of interesting. A lot of times people will say, well, if you're Christian, you'll see Jesus, or,
Mhm.
that it's based on your beliefs. Well, yeah, I wasn't Catholic. I didn't know anything about her.
In
And
fact, you grew up Mormon, right?
yes,
Yes,
yes.
that's so interesting.
Yeah, and later I've found out, which we can talk about later, why she came to me. And
Well,
but it's
why
funny.
don't you tell me now, like, what
Okay,
is her role in the spiritual world?
so I didn't know at first. And so here's what was really interesting is Trisha Barker's been a friend of mine for like since I started my group.
Yeah.
And she promised me, or I promised her, that when I was ready to tell my story, I would do it first on her podcast.
Wow.
So, and it took a few years, like, because it was just so sacred to me that I didn't want to,
Yeah.
I don't know, I just didn't want to, people in my sharing
You didn't
groups knew.
want to put it up for criticism. I know that
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so anyway, as I was getting ready to do her podcast, I'm like, I've never really thought about why Teresa came
Right.
because I was dealing with so many other things,
Right.
like I was having all kinds of other spiritual encounters, but so I decided to go look her up, and I saw the basilica where she lived and died. And it blew me away because I had been there. And the countryside that this basilica looks at is the countryside that I saw in the hospital.
Wow.
So I then knew I will learn more when the time. That's what I've always known is like when the time is right is when I'll know something.
Yeah.
And so yeah, later I found out that, through illness, she was in a coma, and that was one of the ways that she went through purification.
Wow.
Yeah. And so since then I've been like experiencing my past life with her because I lived there or spent a lot of time there with her.
And so
And
was she sort of also saying that that illness for you was your purification?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it really has been. It was, and what's kind of funny is almost ever since, like I will, get issues that then cause me to leave my body for a while, and it's always like keeps me humble.
Mhm.
So I somehow chose this way. to wake
You
up.
chose the hard knock wake up call road, which I can relate to, and I think many of our listeners can relate to. But what's so fascinating for you is that it's really about your body, that every lesson that was going to come on to get you to wake up was going to be something in your body like dramatically breaking down.
Yeah,
And then yet earlier in your life when you were successful, you were also a model, right? Isn't that true?
yeah,
So
yeah.
your body is such an integral part of your whole spiritual journey here. It's just amazing to me.
Yeah, and with that hernia, that was a huge humbling experience
Mm.
because I realized then that I was, what's that word? Like I was not impenetrable.
Oh,
Like
you were vulnerable.
yes, vulnerable, yes.
Hmm.
And that was the first time really that I'd ever felt that.
And how
And
old
so
were you then?
35.
Wow.
Yeah, around 35. And yeah, so it has been my way. And so yeah, so when I was going in, I had my mom, thank God, but she wasn't there at the beginning. It was Saint Teresa. And at some point they had to put me on the ventilator, and they called my sisters, to come say goodbye. I wasn't gonna make it. My sisters actually came and cleaned out my apartment, threw stuff away, like thinking that I wasn't coming out. And so I was on the ventilator for a week or two and strapped down, and what was interesting, but I was in and out of my body constantly. And my sisters, they couldn't really handle seeing their brother die. So they would leave the room, and my one sister would go to the coffee cart and she'd go talk to her family, and I'd just leave my body and follow her over there. And then my other sister would go to the cafeteria and eat egg salad. So I'd go follow her because it's like, I don't want to be stuck in this ICU room alone. And, and so it was funny because the one sister knew about my mother. She was the one that was actually hiking with me.
Mhm.
But I don't know how much she totally believed me. I mean, but because like in the hospital, I was talking to my mother, and I had a nephew that died of cystic fibrosis,
Mm.
and he was there. And so my sister, she said, "Tell mom hi." And I'm like, "Tell her yourself. She's right behind you." And so uh, at some point, so I was in and out of my body constantly. And one of the most amazing things for me is to actually be above my body with God, with my mom, and be one with them, but also separate. And then to look down on my body. And the first thing I thought is, you poor thing, what have you been thinking about yourself? And and that's when I, number one, experienced true compassion for myself. And I always try to think back. Every time I'm hard on myself, I think back to that moment of looking at myself. It was like, a dog when you have to put the collar on it,
Yeah.
because they're like licking their wounds and they don't know
Right.
what they're doing.
Right.
Or like a child when they're like bumping into the walls and stuff.
Mhm.
And and that's how I saw myself. It's just this innocent person that believed the worst about himself.
Shaun, I love this because it was you kind of having that soul review where you could see how hard you had tried, how many things you had tried to do in good faith, open heart in your lifetime. That is the greatest gift of compassion. And when I was diagnosed with cancer last year, I had a similar in my healing journey. a thing where I lifted up and saw Sue Frederick on Earth. And I've been very hard on Sue Frederick in my little critical Virgo mind. And yet I could see from that perspective, wow, she just kept trying and trying again. She was so strong and determined. That's compassion from the God source. How did that change you moving forward?
Oh, it changed everything because I never felt loved my whole life. And I saw that I had done all this stuff for validation. And I was seeking really love and the love of God with not, but the thing about me is I had to get the stuff to know that the stuff is not what makes me happy and
Right.
that, is peaceful. So I'm not one that can just learn something from
In
somebody
an
else's.
ideal way. You have to experience it.
Yeah, yes. But the funny thing is also I was finally brought to my knees where I was done suffering.
I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah, that was the big thing. I didn't want to suffer anymore. And so I was begging God, please let me let me come back again. Now I was really on my knees. I mean, the NDE before was like almost like an NDE light. It was like a primer
A
for what
primer.
was to come. But this one, like, there was no denying anything. And so one of the things that was so amazing, there was a lot of amazing stuff, but uh actually, so that's when they started sending me songs. And it was amazing. So there's this song with Daniel Hokie, I think is his name. All of a sudden I forgot. Tell Your Heart to Beat Again. And basically, it's all about yesterday's a closing door. You don't live there anymore. And shattered, which is pretty much what I've been shattered, but you don't live there anymore. And, tell your heart to beat again. That's when I started getting the message that I was going to be allowed to come back. And so I heard that song. And later, after the ICU, I heard it again several times, like in my room. And then they took me to this so I had to stay like a month in the ICU, then like 2 or 3 months in the hospital because my whole body shut down to die. So I couldn't eat, well, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't keep, saturation. And so I had to learn how to do everything. But what was interesting is then this medical transport took me to a rehab hospital and which is basically an ambulance. So I'm in the ambulance, and all of a sudden on the radio, there's that song again, shattered like you've never been before. Yesterday's a closing door, tell your heart to beat again. And heard it again several times there. And then when I finally came home from the rehab, literally, I came home on a Friday, like it was 3.5 months. I came home on a Friday, and that Monday I was supposed to go back to the hospital. Well, as I went downstairs waiting for the medical transport, the doors open, and guess what song's playing? Same song, Tell Your Heart to Beat Again. Yesterday's a closing door. And so that was the beginning of they would speak to me through anything, but songs. And I always knew if it's for me versus just a random song. But back to the ICU, um, they had tried everything. They didn't know what to do. The longer they leave you on the ventilator, the worse your chances are, and the harder it is to get you off of it. So I signed all the documents that I wasn't gonna like stay on the ventilator, and I wasn't gonna like if they couldn't save me, they couldn't save me. Like so I signed all those documents, and then they decided to take me off the ventilator, and they're like, we don't know what's gonna happen, but the only option is to give you a tracheotomy. So, is the like last option. Well, anyway, so my nephew, who had died of cystic fibrosis, was in there, and he was at the end of the foot of the bed, and he basically was up, and they're getting ready to take the tube out. And so what he did is, Foghorn Leghorn, the rooster
Yeah.
commercial or cartoon. So that rooster had like a puffy chest. And so my nephew was showing me him,
Wow.
and he was puffing his chest out. And what he was trying to do is show me how to breathe. And so he puffed up his chest, and as the tube's coming out, he's literally like showing me what to do. And as the tube came out, he breathed into me from the other side. And literally, I could breathe.
Filled your lungs.
Yes.
Yes, and you didn't have to have the tracheotomy.
Right. I couldn't keep the saturation, so I had to wear an oxygen mask for like another month or two.
Mhm.
But um, but I could breathe.
Wow.
And it was the most amazing thing.
So, Shaun, all of this to get you to step up to your true soul's work. So, tell us, what is your true soul's work that you've been nudged and nudged and nudged to do?
Well, honestly, now my current purpose is helping other NDEs and people that have had spiritually transformative experiences and spiritual emergencies, and help them go through that, because you feel crazy. And I felt crazy for like 2 years, because I was communicating with I started calling them the gang, because it was like my mom, my nephew, and then other people and my guides, and uh and
So, do you
I
coach people now, or how do you?
yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah. So a lot of people, they're shy. They don't want to tell their story publicly, like in my sharing groups.
Right.
And so yeah, I will, they will tell me. And then, some NDEs, a lot of times there's like this saying, like, I got it, I lost it, like
Mhm.
they have the light for a long time and
Right.
then hit the wall and kind of lose it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so what's wrong with me?
Mm.
And I've been there, done that.
Mhm.
And what's kind of cool about that's when I learned about Ram Dass. I really didn't know who he
Uh,
was.
mhm.
A little bit, but
Yeah.
and he lived here, and
Oh,
he
wow.
I found he had this great quote and a whole documentary and a lot of work about becoming nobody. And he said, so this quote said that when you spend your whole life becoming somebody, and then with a spiritual awakening, you realize that none of that matters. There's like this emptiness that the spirit doesn't necessarily flood right away. And
So fascinating because I think also the gift of old age, if you stay in your body, as you get older, especially past the second Saturn return that's coming up for you that we're going to talk about in a minute. But once you get past that, I think one of the gifts is we start disassembling the ego. And up until that point, we've been assembling the ego story. I'm successful and I've done this and I own that. And then we hit that place in life where spirit and whoever and however it nudges us each individually goes, that is not what you're here for. And we start disassembling it. But you have been able to use all of this pain and suffering and awakening and illness to go to other people who are being disassembled and help them understand the purpose of it. That is really sacred work. Have you written a book about this, Shaun?
it's coming. I have literally been a reluctant messenger.
Yeah,
I
I agree with that.
during the yeah, slow, need to be hit over the head a few times, but that's actually one of the things that Teresa is here, Saint Teresa, to help me with.
Yeah.
And also Saint John of the Cross,
Oh,
they were
yeah.
good friends.
Yeah.
And so I know that they're going to help me because honestly, every time I sat down to write too much,
Hmm.
it's pretty traumatic. And
Oh, yeah.
and what I've had a life of pain. And what was so interesting after my NDE, I was listening to Paul Selig, if you know who he
Hmm.
is. He's a
Hmm.
channel.
Yeah.
He also lives here on
Oh,
Maui. He moved here during COVID.
wow.
And so I was listening to him and the guides. And what was funny is his guides and my gang would say the same stuff. And I just thought, like, oh my gosh, this is like so wild. Truth is truth.
Yeah.
And uh, but I was really nauseous and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then it dawned on me that I had to take responsibility. I created this life. I created this path.
Hmm.
And at first it was like, why would I choose all this?
Well, your human self didn't choose it. Your
Right,
soul chose it.
right. And like I said, my higher self has brought my lower self kicking and screaming all the way.
That is a perfect description of our earth lives. Our higher self brings our lower human self along the path of ascension, kicking, screaming, yelling all the way, every step. And Shaun, I've always said that the stronger a soul we are, the more we'll probably resist that growth. Like we'll just say, forget that. I'm just going to figure out how to be happy here in the physical world, in the physical way. And our soul is going, really?
Right.
Yeah. And
Yes.
I love that you can speak to people who are resisting the message because, that's when they need a voice like yours and a story like yours.
Yeah, now I am so grateful for all the trauma, all the pain, because I feel like that's like true empathy. Like
Yes.
I can help people because I've been there,
Yeah.
and a lot of people have, awakenings and stuff because of trauma,
Right.
and I
I
found
think
almost,
trauma is the only thing that really wakes us up here.
I think so too, and certainly for me,
Yeah.
but I do know it doesn't have to be so hard now.
Yeah. Well, you and I are the storybook examples of how not to do the awakening.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
what would you say to a listener who is going through their own dark night of the soul and getting a certain nudge from the soul, but kind of cynical about it, and going, oh, that can't be the right way for me to go? What would you say to them?
Well, so what I learned in my experience with the Dark Night of the Soul is you have to go through it. You can't go around it. You can't anesthetize, which I, did. I tried everything to
Mhm.
go around it. Like, and it was literally head on. And so literally I started learning, well, what am I supposed to learn in this darkness? And I think, and it was funny, one of the things I learned is about prayer. Like, because I used to pray for like when I was going through the dark night, like, help me find a buyer, help me get this
Yeah,
loan,
help me
help
get a
me.
car.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, praying for stuff.
right.
And and I didn't understand all of that was happening for me, not to me.
Yes.
And I kept thinking, why? And so if you're blessed with the dark night of the soul, and it doesn't feel like a blessing when you're having it,
Right.
it feels awful. But it means the light is coming if you go through it.
If you go through it. Oh, yes, yes, yes. And you speak at the IANDS conferences, International Association of Near-Death Studies. You have this huge group that you mentor on Facebook and on the the Hawaiian IANDS. I love that name because it sounds like Hawaiian Islands, but it's Hawaiian IANDS group.
Right.
And can anybody go and find that group and watch the videos?
Yeah, yeah. We have a YouTube channel, and yeah, when you search Hawaiian Islands, it'll say, did you mean Hawaiian Islands?
Perfect. And
But
so somebody can search YouTube and find Shaun Lether, Lether, and Hawaiian IANDS, IANDS, and watch more of your videos, and then watch the people that you're interviewing who've had near-death experiences as well. It is such an important message for our world, Shaun. And just like everybody who's ever met you, I fell completely in love with you hearing your story. You're just such an open-hearted, good soul. So, what is the best way for people to reach you then?
well,
Oh no, I think we've frozen up here.
with Shaun Lether, or they can
Okay.
find me on Facebook, Instagram,
Okay.
uh, Twitter.
Perfect.
But yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and anybody who wants, our groups are free. The speaker events and the sharing
Mhm.
group, and they're all free.
Perfect. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to the beautiful Shaun Lether tell his story. And this is Sue Frederick having a mystical conversation with Shaun Lether. And I'm the author of the Angel Up books. They're all available on Amazon, and my website is suefrederick.com. And I hope you'll reach out to Shaun and get his spiritual wisdom to help you on your journey. So thank you so much. And thank you so much, Shaun. It's been a blessing.
Oh, thank you, Sue. I really enjoyed that.